Welcome back, all of you. Today we'll discuss the next topic, that is the relationship between LTI system properties and the impulse response. We know that the impulse response of any LTI system, suppose we have a LTI system and with input xt, output yt, and impulse response h of t, or its discrete counterpart can be xn, yn, and h of n. So for any LTI system, the impulse response characterizes the input-output behavior. That is the thumb rule. Impulse response characterizes the input-output behavior of LTI system. So it depends on the impulse response how the system will behave and what changes it will bring into the applied input signal. So obviously the properties of the system, all the properties that we have seen of the system, that is system with memory, without memory, causality of a system, stability of a system, invertibility of a system, all such properties of the system will also be somehow related to the impulse response. Because impulse response characterizes the behavior of LTI system, so all the system properties will somehow be related to the impulse response. So that is what we are going to study in this topic. What is the relationship between the LTI system properties with the impulse response? So we'll begin with the first relationship, that is LTI system with and without memory. We have already seen this system property, that system with and without memory. That means if the system output of a system depends on the present output depends on the present input, then we can say the system is without memory system. Otherwise, we can say the system is a with memory system. Now let us see how it is related to the impulse response, this property. See, we know the impulse response, the system equation y of n will be equal to h of n convolution x of n. This is the system equation for a discrete time LTI system, which can be expanded as mathematically h of k into x n minus k, where k spans from minus infinity to infinity. So if you further expand this expression, we can say that it can be said to be equivalent to and so on. Alright, we can expand this summation term as this, right? Now we know the standard expression of a memoryless system. We know that a memoryless system the present output depends only on the present input. Now yn is the output. So in order to make the system as a memoryless system, this yn should depend only on x of n, that means this term. That means all the other terms, these all terms and these infinite terms, should be 0. That means h of k should be equal to 0 for k not equal to 0. In order to make the system memoryless, this condition should be satisfied, so that all these terms are 0 except this. That is, the present output y of n depends on only the present input x of n, this nth time instant, right? So we can say that this y of n should be equal to h of 0 into x of n for a memoryless system. This is for a memoryless system. Okay, let us say that this h of 0 is some constant k. So you can say that y of n should be equal to some k times of x of n. Now we know by the definition of impulse response that is the response or the output of a system when the applied input is a impulse signal, unit impulse signal. Impulse response can be defined as a response or the output of the system when the input applied is unit impulse. Okay, that means the impulse response, that means the output, the response for a memoryless system should be proportional to the input signal x of n. That means the impulse response h of n should be some constant times of impulse response, unit impulse. So this is the relationship, because when hn is equal to some k times of delta n, we can say that yn is equal to what? Xn convolution hn. So this becomes xn convolution k times of delta n, that is equal to k times of x of n, which is what is required for a memoryless system. Yn should be equal to k times of xn. Hence the impulse response should be some constant times the unit impulse. So for a system to be memoryless, this is the condition. The impulse response of the LTI system should be k times delta n. So this is the condition for system to be memoryless. I'll repeat this concept once again. We are dealing with the LTI system with and without memory. So this is the system equation for any LTI system. Yn is equal to hn convolution x of n. You can expand it mathematically as a summation. Further, if we expand this summation expression, it can be written as this. Now, for a memoryless system, we know that the present output depends only on the present input. Okay, so this is the present output y of n. It should depend only on the present input, that is x of n. Rest all the other terms should be 0. So it should depend only on this, and all the other terms prior to this and after this should be equal to 0. Okay, and all these terms will be 0 when h of k is equal to 0 for k not equal to 0. Alright, so we can say that y of n for a memoryless system will be h of 0 into x of n, or we can say y of n is equal to some constant times x of n. Alright, now we need to find out what should be the impulse response for such a system. If we say that impulse response is k times of delta n, then we can say that because y of n, the output is equal to xn convolution hn, substitute hn over here, you get this, and xn convolution delta n is nothing but x of n. So we can say that the impulse response for a memoryless system is k times of delta n. So this is the condition which should be satisfied in terms of impulse response of a LTI system to be memoryless. And correspondingly, the continuous time impulse response will be h of t is equal to k times of delta t. So these are the two conditions 1 and 2 which needs to be satisfied for a system to be a memoryless LTI system for discrete time and for continuous time. Similarly, let us look at the second relationship of the LTI property with impulse response, that is causality of LTI system. Okay, so according to the definition of causality, we know that the output of a causal system depends on the present and the past values of the input signal. Output of a causal system depends only on the present and the past values of input. So we'll go for the similar approach. The system equation y of n is equal to h of n convolution x of n, which can be written as summation of h of k into x of n minus k ranging from minus infinity to infinity. If we expand it further, we can write it as plus, let's say, h of minus 1 x of n plus 1 plus h of 0 x of n plus h of 1 x of n minus 1 and so on. Okay, this is the y of n. Now, according to the definition of causality, output of a causal system depends only on the present and past values of input. So yn, in order to make the system a causal system, the yn should depend on the present. If this is the yn, nth instant we are talking about. So this is the present input x of n, and these are the past input xn minus 1, xn minus 2, xn minus 3, and so on. So this output should not depend on the future values, this xn plus 1, xn plus 2, and xn plus 3, and so on. These are the future values. So it should not depend on these values. Rather, it should depend only on these values. It should not depend on this. It should depend on this. Alright. So we can say that h of n should be 0 for indices n less than 0. This should be the condition for a system to be a causal system. This should be the value of impulse response for a system to be a causal system, and its continuous time counterpart can be written as h of t equal to 0 for t less than 0. So these are the conditions of the impulse response for the system to be a causal system. Okay, so the next relationship is for the stability of LTI system. We know that a system is stable if every bounded input produces a bounded output. We know that a system is stable if every bounded input produces a bounded output. This is the standard rule for stability or checking the stability of a system. That means if y of n, we are talking about y of n, magnitude of y of n. So this would be, if we are talking about system equation, alright. And if we expand it in terms of summation, this will be h of k, x of n minus k ranging from minus infinity to plus infinity. And in order to be stable, this should be bounded. So we can say that k from minus infinity to infinity should be h of k, x of n minus k. Alright. Now to check the bounded condition, the input, if we assume the input to be bounded, let's say bounded input is b of x, which is less than infinity, and then we can say that this x of n minus k, the shifted version of input, modulus of this will also be less than equal to b of x. So we assume the input to be bounded, x of n minus k to be bounded, b of x. So we can say that y of n would be less than equal to modulus of the summation k ranging from minus infinity to infinity, modulus of hk into b of x. Okay. Now this bx, we know it is bounded, it is less than infinity. For output to be bounded, that means this y of n, modulus of y of n to be bounded, this summation should be less than infinity. That means summation modulus of hk, k ranging from minus infinity to infinity, should be less than infinity. If this condition is satisfied, then we can clearly say that the system is a stable LTI system. So if this condition of impulse response is satisfied, then we can say our system is a stable LTI system, and its corresponding continuous time counterpart would be the integral of the impulse response should be less than infinity. So if these two conditions for discrete time and for continuous time are satisfied, then we can say the system is a stable system. Next one is regarding the invertibility of a LTI system. Invertibility of a LTI system. For a system, LTI system to be invertible, the condition of the impulse response is the impulse response convolved with inverse of the impulse response should be equal to the unit impulse function, and its discrete time counterpart should be h of n convolved with h inverse n will be equal to del of n. So this condition of impulse response for continuous time and discrete time is satisfied, then we can say that the LTI system is an invertible LTI system. So the next topic is now correlation of signals. So correlation, just like convolution, is another mathematical tool, and it closely resembles convolution. Okay. Just as in case of convolution, two signals are involved. Similarly, in correlation also, if we're talking about cross correlation, two different signals are involved. So, but in contrast to convolution, the objective of correlation between the two signals is to find out the measure of the degree of similarity between the two signals. So, it gives us the measure of degree of similarity between the two signals. This is the purpose of correlation. It is used to find out the similarity between the two signals, degree of similarity between the two signals. Now let us analyze different types of correlation one by one. First one is cross correlation function of energy signal. Cross correlation function of energy signal. Okay, so whenever we talk about cross correlation, that means obviously there are two signals involved in it. Okay, let us assume that xt and yt are those two signals, and we are dealing with energy signals. So we assume that xt and yt have finite energy. These are two finite energy signals. Alright, so the cross correlation function is represented by rxy argument tau, okay, which can be mathematically written as integral minus infinity to infinity xt y conjugate t minus tau d tau, or it can be alternatively written as integral xt plus tau into y conjugate t dt. This is also dt, not d tau, dt. Yeah. So this is how we can mathematically represent a cross correlation function between the two signals. And if we are dealing with two real signals, if xt and yt are real signals, then this cross correlation function can be represented as integral xt into y t minus tau dt, or integral xt plus tau into yt dt. If xt and yt are real, then we can express cross correlation function between xt and yt as this. Okay, now this subscript xy, this xy subscript, this has a particular meaning. The order of this subscript has a particular meaning. So in this order, you can see x is preceding y. So this indicates this order of the subscript indicates the direction in which one signal is shifted relative to the other. This represent the direction in which one signal is shifted relative to other. So here you can see that the order is same xy. So xt precedes yt minus tau will be obviously a shifted version of yt, and shift will be towards the right hand side. Okay, so xt will always lie before yt minus tau, and similarly xt plus tau will be shifted towards left, so it will be before yt. So this order plays a very important role, and it shows that it represents the direction in which one signal is shifted relative to the other signal. So what happens if we reverse this order? That means ryx, if we find out ry of x, it is equal to integral yt xt minus tau. Now yt precedes xt here because the order is reversed over here, and this is also equal to integral yt plus tau into xt dt. Okay, this is y of x. So now if we compare these two expressions, this one, equation A and equation B, we can say that this rxy tau is nothing but equal to ry of x minus tau. This is again a very, very important relationship. Next type of cross correlation or correlation rather is cross correlation function of power signals. Okay, so now again we are talking about cross correlation. That means it involves two different signals, let's say xt and yt, and now these two signals are power signals and have finite power. So mathematically we can define cross correlation for these two power signals in a similar way as we defined it for energy signal. The only contrast will be now we'll take time average, which is counterpart, power signal counterpart of energy signal, that is rxy tau is equal to limit t tending towards infinity 1 upon t, that is the time average. This is we call it as time average, minus t by 2 to t by 2 xt y conjugate t minus tau dt, or equal to limit t tending towards infinity 1 upon t minus t by 2 to t by 2 x t plus tau into y conjugate t dt. This is how we can define a cross correlation function of a power signal. And obviously if we have real signals, xy signals are real signals, then we can say that it is can be written as xt into y t minus tau dt, or limit t tending towards infinity 1 upon t xt plus tau into yt dt. So this is how we can define the cross correlation function for the power signals. It is just similar to that of the energy signal, only difference is we use time average now because we are dealing with the power signal instead of energy signal. Alright, so next type of correlation is autocorrelation function correlation function. So autocorrelation function is, you can say, a very special case of cross correlation function. As the name suggests, autocorrelation. In case of autocorrelation, we find the measure of degree of similarity of a signal with itself, signal with the time shifted version of itself. It gives the degree of similarity of a signal with the time shifted version of the same signal. This is how we can define a autocorrelation function. It gives the degree of similarity between a signal and the time shifted version of the same signal. That means instead of having two different signals, now we have only a single signal, and we find its degree of similarity between two different time instants. And mathematically we can define it as represented as Rxx. Instead of Rxy, we represent it as Rxx tau, and it's equal to integral xt into xt minus tau dt. That is signal with a shifted version of the same signal. Find the similarity of the signal with the shifted version of the same signal, or alternatively we can define it as xt plus tau into xt dt. Okay, so this is for the energy signal. If xt is an energy signal, and if xt is your power signal, then autocorrelation function can be defined as, we use the time average now. This is your time average, and rest of the expression will remain same. Or alternatively we can say it as limit t tending towards infinity 1 upon t integral minus t by 2 to t by 2 xt plus tau to xt dt. So this is dt. So this is the expression for when xt is a power signal. Xt is a power signal. Next, we'll look at some of the important properties of cross correlation and autocorrelation functions. Properties, cross correlation function and autocorrelation function. First one is, we have already seen this property that Rx by tau is equal to R by x minus tau, which can be extended to autocorrelation function as Rx x tau is equal to R x x minus tau. That is, it is a even function of tau. It's quite obvious when xt is equal to yt, then this equation will hold, right? So this is the first property of cross correlation function and autocorrelation function. Second one is regarding the relation to signal energy and signal power. Second one is regarding the relation with signal energy and power. So if you look at the expression of autocorrelation autocorrelation function, the Rxx0 is equal to nothing but energy of the signal, because it is limited to x square d dt. This is for the energy signal, if xt is energy signal. If xt is energy signal, autocorrelation function at instant tau equal to 0 is nothing but equal to energy of that signal, because you can see from the expression here we look at this expression, for tau equal to 0, this will be limited to integral x square t dt. Yes, for tau is equal to 0, it will be limited to integral x square t dt, which is nothing but energy of the signal. Okay, similarly, if xt is a power signal, in that case, rxx with argument 0, that is tau is equal to 0, is nothing but power of the signal, because it is time average now. It is power of the signal, which is nothing but equal to limit t tending towards infinity 1 upon t integral minus infinity to minus t by 2 to t by 2 x square t dt. So this rxx0 will be power if xt is a power signal. So this is the second property. Third property says that the autocorrelation function is a periodic signal with period t. That means ACF, the autocorrelation function of a periodic signal, is also periodic with same period. Autocorrelation function of a periodic signal is also a periodic signal. With the same period, let's say t, which means if there's a periodic signal, that is xt is equal to xt plus minus t, then its autocorrelation function of this xt will also be a periodic signal. This is the third property. Moving on to the fourth one, it says that if the cross correlation function rxy is argument 0 is equal to 0, then we can conclude that xt and yt are orthogonal. Alright, so these are some of the important properties of the cross correlation and the autocorrelation functions. Okay, so that is all for this video lecture. The next video lecture will discuss all the similar concepts of correlation or cross correlation, autocorrelation for discrete time signals. It is exactly similar to what we have already seen for the case of continuous time signal. So we'll quickly first finish the discrete time counterpart of correlation, and then we'll move on to some practice questions in the next video lecture. Thank you so much.